Story 1. I thought that being suicidal during the premenstrual period was normal. It turns out that most people do not experience mood swings that extreme. I did not find out until my mid-30s. Story 2. Period pain. Every adult woman would tell me that period pain was normal. Mine was so severe I would cry, throw up, and one time even pass out. Turns out it was endometriosis. So much pain is never normal. Story 3. Wearing high heels that hurt like hell. I seriously thought everyone just powered through the pain like it was some unspoken rule. It turns out a lot of women simply do not wear them if they are uncomfortable. Story 4. The first couple of decades of my life, I thought it was totally normal that every single day was just stress. All day long, being on edge, scared, screaming, yelling, and fighting about anything and everything. It was not until my mid to late 20s that I realized life does not have to be that way. Story 5. Debilitating cramps. At 12, I was told, it's not that bad. Everyone experiences it. I had irregular periods, and the cramps were so severe I couldn't walk. I threw up everything, and no over-the-counter medication worked. I was told I was being dramatic. Somewhere in this time, I developed a substance abuse disorder. 13, I started birth control. At 14 to 15, my periods stopped altogether. It wasn't until I was about 18 that someone told me this was definitely not normal. Story 6. Have you seen how they get a biopsy from inside the cervix? No pain medication is offered. They just use a hole punch to take some tissue and tell you there is nothing to react to. Story 7. Everything is in your head. Disrespectful treatment from partners or family. Ignored health concerns from healthcare professionals. Issues at work. You are a woman and you are overreacting. And then I realized that my feelings matter. Story 8. Having to phrase every statement as a question so you did not get berated if it turned out to be wrong or even if it was right, but the other party just assumed it was wrong. Story 9. Silent treatment from their mother. I thought this type of behavior was normal for most of my life. It is surprising how some mothers actually talk to their daughters about their feelings or explain why they are upset. Story 10. Being the default person for many tasks is routine for me. I make lunch and dinner every day. That is normal. He makes dinner once and expects a parade in his honor. He asks, "Where's my shirt?" As if I somehow obviously know the whereabouts of his things, which I usually do because I also do the laundry. He asks me to make a dentist appointment for him next month. Who makes my appointments? I do. On top of this, I work more hours than he does. When he has his weekly long shift, which is 12 hours, the same as my regular shift, he can't even put his socks in the laundry basket because he is too tired. But of course, I am not tired, right? These things just get done behind the scenes. The dishes do not unload themselves while he sleeps. Story 11. I used to think every woman just quietly accepted being groped at clubs like it was part of the nightlife tax until I saw a girl grab a man's wrist mid-grope and yell, "Try that again, and I will break your fingers." Queen behavior. Story 12. I used to think it was normal for sex to hurt, and that I had to let my now ex-husband have sex with me whenever he wanted, even though it caused me pain. I would put a pillow over my face so he would not see me grimace. Since then, I have had a life-saving hysterectomy and gotten divorced. Sex is actually better when it does not hurt, and when the person is not abusive. Story 13. Being with a partner who you love but who does not fully love you back. When my partner and I found each other, it made all of the previous relationships seem horrid and toxic. Story 14. Sexual pressure. I thought every boyfriend believed they were owed sex and that it was normal for them to use emotional manipulation to get it. Story 15. Body dysmorphia and hating your appearance. I thought feeling sexy was a sign of narcissism. My mom wasn't the best role model in that regard. I spent my formative years hearing the awful things my mom said about herself in front of the mirror, even though she was gorgeous. Always on a diet, her but always huge. Her belly never flat enough after me, her second child, just to add a pinch of guilt on my part. After my older brother, she lost all the baby. Wait, I was an ice skater, so the expectations of the sport and the attitude of the other girls. I was called fat ass at age 10. Didn't help either. Also, it was the 1990s and 2000s beauty standards I grew up with. I remember the tabloids about Britney when she gained weight after giving birth. I was in the trenches of Tumblr when Thinspiration was everywhere. Then came high school and all the toxicity you can imagine. Fat shaming, restrictive diets, insane weight goals, always criticizing ourselves or someone else. I think teenage girls are the most cruel and despicable creatures on earth. No wonder I developed an eating disorder by age 16. Now, 2 years into recovery, I see that as anything but normal. It's not part of being a woman. I'm nearing 30. My best years are behind me. With a metabolism that fast and a lifestyle as active as mine, I could have been slim but not skinny effortlessly. Instead, I spent my 20s starving, exercising until throwing up, hating myself, envious of others, bringing other women down so I could feel better about myself. I finally understand that self-confidence isn't narcissism. Women who say they are feeling sexy or like their bodies are not lying so the rest of us can feel even worse about ourselves. I know that I am sick, that I have a mental illness, and I am not like every other woman. Story 16. Being stared at, harassed, and followed in public. It started when I was 10, and the adults in my family just laughed it off or called it a compliment. I thought that was just the way it is when you are a girl. When I was around 20, I read a short essay by a transgender woman who said that once she started passing, she felt like she was being hunted by predators when she was in public. I thought, yes, that is it. That is what it feels like. Then I realized how wrong that is and how normalizing it was just the adults in my family failing me. Now I am old and do not get as much attention, which is liberating. Story 17. It is normal to feel like you constantly have to double-check if you are too much until you realize everyone deserves to just be themselves without walking on eggshells. Story 18. Never being trusted to provide the correct answer. This mainly applies to fields commonly considered masculine, such as trades, but can occur in any topic. It frustrates me that people often do not believe a woman has the right answer, so they ask a man who provides the same answer. They believe him, why not me? Story 19. My dad always screamed at mom and us constantly. He never hit her, only us when he thought we deserved it. I thought it was normal growing up. Story 20. Lack of orgasms with a partner. I can do it by myself, but never even remotely close with a partner. We are all different, and some women do not, but I thought none of us did. I thought we were all faking it for men. Story 21. Putting up with a spouse who not only would not respect normal boundaries but also tried to make me feel like I was wrong for setting simple boundaries. This is part of the reason we are divorcing now. Story 22. Doing all chores for the house while my former husband did nothing. He had the mindset of it's women's work. I divorced him 22 years ago. I am now in a happy, stable relationship with an amazing man, and we do just about everything together. If one of us is not up to it, the other jumps in. I could share more examples, but let me just say, know your worth, find love that is real, and do not become someone's slave. Some people enjoy this kind of dynamic, and if it suits you, go for it, but make sure you are not being taken advantage of. Much love to all. Story 23. Working for two without recognition. Both at home and at work. She will take care of everything. She is more responsible. But when she burns out, she is blamed for being weak. Story 24. The constant pressure to manage the emotions of men around us is exhausting. If an unwelcome man approaches or touches you, you can't react too strongly because you don't know if he will become violent. You have to reject him carefully to avoid hurting his ego. Recently, a man grabbed my hand while I was waiting for the metro and asked if I wanted a new friend. I said no thanks and tried to pull my hand away. He got angry and started yelling insults. I wanted to respond, but I felt afraid he might push me onto the tracks or pull out a weapon. So I de-escalated the situation by apologizing. It is always surprising that when I tell male friends about this, they get offended and say a real man would have defended me. Yet, there were about 6 men nearby on the platform and not one looked my way. Story 25. Harassment. I started getting harassed very early on at 13 years old. And it felt horrible, but I did not tell people because I thought it was just how life is. Story 26. A few months ago, my friend came to me and asked if it was normal for a partner to continue having sex when she had said no, specifically by forcing her to have anal sex. I was heartbroken for her that she had reached her 30s thinking this was normal. Her only previous relationship was when she was groomed by her teacher as a teenager, so she had no idea what a healthy relationship looked like. I am glad she opened up to her friends and that she has now left the relationship. She is building a life for herself and her children without her abusive ex. Story 27. Bad doctors. I did not know there were good doctors until I moved away and realized, wait, doctors actually listen to you? Story 28. Constantly worrying about your outfits. Is it too revealing? Too boring? Do I look like a prude? Too attractive or unattractive to be taken seriously? For some girls, worrying about this starts as early as preschool. Story 29. Debilitating menstrual cramps, dismissed by doctors for 40 years, were caused by endometriosis, resulting in infertility and requiring multiple surgeries. Story 30. Having a heavy first menstrual period, I experienced a pool of blood in the bed. Then I became angry and aggressive afterward. It turns out I had an abnormal first menstruation, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, and bipolar disorder at 10 years old. I thought all the other girls in my class saw a pediatric gynecologist starting in 5th grade and took birth control pills for heavy periods. Turns out they did not. Story 31. Useless men. My parents are in their mid-60s and my father still huffs men, while literally making him a sandwich. It has really affected all three of us kids. Do not stay in a marriage for the kids. It does the opposite of what you think. Story 32. Men hitting on women at the gym, their waitress job, or their service clerk job. The men are like, oh, she was so nice. Guess what? She is being paid to be nice. Keep it in your pants and leave these women alone. Story 33. You cannot argue or disagree with your significant other, or they will become upset, smash things, and act violently. Story 34. Overt sexualization happens to men as well. Media and marketing use explicit sexualization of girls, meaning minors under the age of adulthood, and women to sell products, ideas, services, and images. We all normalize this. Story 35. Getting body shamed for the crime of having a large chest. I didn't choose what I have, but all the fathers in my Mormon church noticed, and their wives saw them noticing and blamed me for it. It didn't matter how modestly I dressed. I could have worn a potato sack and still received the same treatment. It got so bad that a rumor started circulating around my church that I was deliberately stuffing my bra to distract the men. That's when my foster mom decided to walk in on me during a shower to confirm that what I have is legitimate. I was humiliated. After that, I always locked the bathroom door whenever I was inside. Afterward, conversations at church turned toward getting me a breast reduction surgery, which the doctor refused to perform, determining it was not medically necessary. I'm so glad I got away from that family and that church. Story 36. Finding out from a friend that many females have been assaulted but do nothing and just carry on with life. I spoke with other female friends and partners, and they all, except one, said the same. Story 37. When I was in my teens, I used to think it was normal when a guy wouldn't stop or kept insisting after I said no. Now, it is an instant turn-off and a clear reason to walk away. Story 38. As a man, it was an absolute eye-opener when I realized how horrific menstrual pain can be for some women. Now, when my daughter is menstruating, I am discreet around her and just make sure she is comfortable. Hopefully, workplaces and similar environments are starting to understand how debilitating this can be. Story 39. Painful periods are a common issue, and many people experience them. Not everyone has debilitatingly painful periods, but medicine needs to make significant progress in understanding female anatomy. The cervix has 3 types of pain nerves. If a doctor tries to convince you that the pain is all in your head when discussing an intrauterine device, consider declining the procedure. There are many negative experiences reported. In summary, the idea that various types of pain are normal for women and that they should stop complaining is unfair. Women are often treated as second-class citizens in society's collective consciousness. Story 40. It is rather sad how many of these responses have to do with sex education or lack thereof. Every woman's body is her own. You do not ever owe your body to someone else. Story 41. Feeling pain during a cesarean section. I was screaming, "I still feel it," and my anesthesiologist said, "We do not want to give her anything too strong. She might not remember the birth." Meanwhile, I did not want my baby near me after he was born because I was so enraged and in agony and felt completely helpless. I am so traumatized by that birth. I absolutely will never have another child. Story 42. Being told to smile. Now realizing how strange it would be for a man to tell another man to smile. It does not happen. Story 43. Where to begin? That we need to apologize for existing, that our pain is not real, that our bodies are objects, that our vocation is labor, basically that we are not human. Story 44. Developing depression may have been caused by being prescribed oral contraceptives as a teenager without any warning about possible side effects. Story 45. I have some scars from ill-fitting sports bras before I found a bra-fitting community. I used to think all women had to put up with bras that rub the underside raw, gores that poke in the center, or other issues. At least all women with a decent bust. Turns out this is mostly an issue for busta women, as most clothing stores do not carry larger bra sizes to try on before buying. All women do have to spend money on expensive bras to find ones that fit well, though. Story 46. I thought it was normal for men to check out and flirt with other women right in front of their partner because I was told that women unknowingly share their man and that it does not make any logical sense for me to be jealous. Story 47. I remember when I was 14, I was visiting some older distant cousins, and we went to a beach party one evening. There was a guy there who was 18 trying to hit on me. I tried to politely turn him down, and I thought it went okay. That was until he decided to sneak up on me from behind while I was sitting down and urinated on my back. I was mortified and ran back to my cousin's place in tears to go shower. From then on, I was always so scared to turn a guy down when he was hitting on me and let more than I care to admit have their way, thinking it was the safer option. I wish I could change that now looking back as an adult, but even now I don't know who I could have told who would have made any difference. Story 48. Got groped at a concert and it upset me. I went to a quiet area by the beer stalls to cry and collect myself. I assumed it happens all the time at gigs. I told a security guard because he came over to ask if I was okay. He told me absolutely not and removed the guy. Thank God for metalheads. Being friendly because in the end I had a great night and everyone was very understanding. If it ever happens to you, please tell someone. You are not being silly or anything like that. I don't know why, but I had it installed in me beforehand that it was something normal. It definitely is not. Story 49. Something that might seem innocuous, but when you experience it regularly for years, you realize it is not. Men expecting you to move or make space for them. Always being the one to move around them when walking on sidewalks that have more than enough room for both of you. But they choose to stride down the middle and make you move. On public transport, spreading their legs wide or leaning too far over on one side of the seat so the person, usually a woman, next to them has to shrink themselves to avoid too much physical contact. When I noticed other women expressing the same experience, I realized this is very common and not just a simple lack of spatial awareness. So I decided to stop moving for them to see what would happen. I suddenly found myself being wedged against men on the subway when I refused to shrink myself anymore and see if they would just sit normally without spreading themselves across the seat. They mostly did not. Or bumping into men, or rather them bumping into me, when I refused to walk around them anymore. They would hit their shoulders against mine as they walked past in the middle of the sidewalk while I was already way over to the left or right but not stepping onto the road to avoid clashing with them. Story 50. People, including women and men, think we are not equal. They believe that because we are not men we should do more, earn less, have fewer rights, and so on. This is idiotic and, although not unusual in 2025, it is pure and deliberate cruelty without remorse. Story 51. I used to think that putting up with constant comments in family too on my appearance or people checking me out was normal. Then I moved to Sweden and one magic day around the age of 34 I noticed that nobody was looking at me that way on the bus or anywhere and slowly started to feel at ease. Story 52. Being touched inappropriately while doing chores like cooking or washing the dishes. I thought that was something men just did. I didn't know we were allowed to feel uncomfortable about it. Story 53. I thought that when in relationships with men, having sex you did not want was part of the price you paid to be in a relationship. Go figure. Story 54. Mansplaining or being spoken to in subtly insulting ways by men is not acceptable anymore. I have become forceful in addressing such behavior. Story 55. I used to think all women instinctively knew how to do makeup perfectly. Turns out it is a whole skill set that requires practice, trial and error, and tutorials. Story 56. Weaponized incompetence. My husband is such a hands-on father and spouse. When women complain about their husbands sitting inactive all night instead of participating in home life, I feel sad for them. Story 57. I used to think that everyone was thinking about ending their lives at least once or twice a month. Fully thinking about it and getting the means to do it. Turns out that no, I was just depressed and extremely suicidal. Not long ago, I discovered that not everyone has a little voice in their head telling them not to stop. People can organize their thoughts quietly and calmly. It is not normal to feel so overwhelmed, like someone is screaming in your head all the time. Story 58. Snide remarks from other women. I used to think it was similar to how boys tease each other. But there is a fondness in that. No, it turns out many women are awful to other women. Story 59. In my early 20s, I visited a friend's church. There were several women in the front row. The second row had more women than men. I do not remember the third row. It felt odd, but upon reflection, I realized that there is nothing that says the first 3 rows of seats at church are a men-only section. That was more just a custom in the church I grew up in. It was like bathroom rules. The same way little girls can go into the men's room with their father, little girls could go sit with their father up at the front. But once a girl was old enough to know girls are different, she had to hold back. Story 60. Don't you hate it when you have your menstrual period and your butt hurts? Apparently, that is a painful bonus feature of endometriosis. Story 61. I had to pretend I was looking for something on the ground because I was fainting again from menstrual cramps and needed to lower my head. Some women are just more sensitive to pain, especially when they are younger. I had severe polycystic ovary syndrome and delivered my first child 2 hours after arriving at the hospital. I had been in labor all day and assumed it was Braxton Hicks contractions. By the time I arrived, I was 7 centimeters dilated and 45 minutes from transition. Clearly, I could not handle pain in my teens and 20s. Story 62. Being nice to creepy or rude men just to stay safe. Smiling, laughing nervously, pretending to be flattered when I felt disgusted because rejecting them too directly could get me hurt. I genuinely thought that was just what we had to do. That is not normal. That is fear. Story 63. I cannot count how many times a boyfriend or my ex-husband started penetrating me while I was asleep. I would wake up and just wish they would get it over with because I was tired. I assumed I had consented if we had had sex even once, as if it was a free pass for the entire night. Or, if I was living with the man and we had not had sex that night, I assumed he had a right to my body because we were living together. My ex-husband did a lot of traumatizing things to me. It has taken years to unravel how badly he affected my thinking. Story 64. There are many worse ones, but the first thing I thought of was washing a man's stained underwear. He was not one of those people who do not wipe, and he did not stink. I just figured that a hairy man means it does not get as clean. I found out that was not true when I started doing my current partner's laundry. I thought, how did I put up with that for so long? Story 65. I thought it was normal for my partner to pressure me into sexual activity almost daily. The more he pressured me, the lower my desire became, so the coercion increased. Turns out this is far more common than it should be, unfortunately, but it is not something I will tolerate ever again. Story 66. Being physically abused by their men. I knew that I would not accept that by age 10. However, it required more life experience to learn that I was not alone. Story 67. I had terrible period pain until a medical student friend told me about prostaglandins and how caffeine can amplify their effect. I cut out caffeine around my period and it had an astounding effect. Years later, having forgotten how bad the pain could be and deciding I would just take some pain medication if it bothered me, I indulged my cravings for coffee, chocolate, and anything I wanted. That night, the cramps were excruciatingly bad and no pain medication could relieve them. Then I remembered there was a reason I had made that change. Story 68. Menopause can be difficult. My gynecologists, as I switched doctors, never talked to me about any options like hormone replacement therapy. I thought it was normal to suffer and believe I was going insane half the time. It took years before I found a gynecologist who would listen to me. Story 69. I would have to say men endlessly flirting with a woman to the point they literally obstruct her from moving. I still see this today. A man, who may be convinced he is a gift to women, makes a comment to a woman like, "You look beautiful today." She says, "Thank you," and tries to go about her business. But the man starts asking questions and won't leave her alone until she finally says, "I am not interested. I have somewhere to be." Even though the man is laughing and saying things like, "Come on, don't be that way," the woman clearly shows a face that says, "This is not funny. I am the youngest of 4 siblings. My older sister is an attractive person. But growing up I used to think men were just joking around with her. So I laughed it off as my sister would say things to me like, 'Don't go anywhere.' She would keep me close. About 10 years ago, I found out why she kept me close when surrounded by flirting men. She was molested by a babysitter when she was about 10. At the time, I had no idea. My family never told me because even at the age of 5, I would have gone scorched earth on the babysitter and his family. In 1978, I was a latchkey kid. I knew more than I should have about explosives, fireworks, and dynamite. My sister hid that secret until I was 43. Let me tell you, I still went looking for him. Now, if I see men flirting with women and the women look uncomfortable, I will stay in the room until it stops. I just did that last week at the gym. Story 70. Dads being emotionally and verbally abusive to their daughters as they age because they are trying to protect them. If I am lucky, the last thing my dad will see before taking his last breath is me showing my anger toward him. Story 71. The requirement to put out was that in order to have anyone interested in me for a relationship, I would have to put out. I have never enjoyed sex. I figured out late in life that asexuality was a real thing, and I absolutely was ace. I do not have to put out for anyone for any reason. My worth is not between my legs. Story 72. Having sex with somebody because you did not feel like they gave you any opportunity to say no. Some of my experiences are in this very gray area between sexual assault and consensual because I have had a man just come on to me and not stop or slow down to see how I felt. At that point, I was too scared of how he would react to rejection. Story 73. I had a drunk man plunk himself down at the table where a group of us ladies were sitting. I was the oldest, so my protective side came out, and I felt quite protective of the young ladies I was with. He kept accidentally dropping things and touching my leg, so I quietly leaned down and said, "If you touch me again, I will break your fingers." He left. Story 74. Being a woman to begin with. I thought everyone hated it and was just better at hiding their misery than I was. I learned about transgender women in early adulthood and was blown away. I started slowly realizing that actually, most of the women I knew liked being women. They had struggles, but not an innate desire to peel the body off their soul. That was pretty eye-opening, to say the least. I stopped pretending I was okay with my situation, and now I feel like I know the women in my life better than ever. I don't have to look at their lives through my own cracked lens anymore. I am able to actually believe them when they tell me they're happy. I come from a literal family of beauticians, and I truly, earnestly spent my entire youth thinking they were all just putting on a costume and waiting to die, when really they were flourishing. I hate that I wasted 20 years completely misunderstanding half of the entire planet. Story 75. Heavy, painful period that could make you nearly vomit. Irregular, so much pain down there that sex would hurt. Feeling like a urinary tract infection all the time. I was told it was normal, that it wasn't that bad. I burst a cyst at age 41 and found out I had severe endometriosis. Those periods were not normal. Story 76. pain, harassment, being touched or groped, having thoughts and feelings disregarded personally and professionally, being expected to do more than boys and men both emotionally and labor-wise, getting yelled at, being talked over and interrupted, being stared at especially as children and young adults, being hit on as children, constantly feeling threatened, constantly moderating our words, expressions, and actions to avoid upsetting people, not being believed, having clothes that do not fit or function as well as men's and boys' clothing. The list goes on. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.